there! Welcome back to the tavern, game masters and players alike. Today I want to talk to you about the hot off the press D&D book, Journeys Through the Radiant... Sorry, still hot, guys. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you all about Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, and I wanted to go ahead and crack this open with y'all because I'm just as excited as y'all probably are as well, and I wanted us to see what was inside of it together. So, without further ado, let's crack this baby open and just see what journeys this book will take us on. So, let's see here. A nice little welcome to the Radiant Citadel section. A nice little table that includes 14 adventures in here and gives a nice little gist about what each one does. And then the first chapter is about the Radiant Citadel itself from the looks of it. Has a nice awesome picture of the Citadel in space floating around. It appears to be a massive diamond floating around in the ethereal plane that has a massive fossil snaked around it of some sort. It's like, you know, it's like a multi-tiered fossil. This is a better picture of it where you can actually see it's like going through different planes and tiers and such. So, the first chapter gives quite a lot of nice information about the landmarks and very important features and functionality of the Citadel itself. It talks about a lot of the famous people in there, like the Speakers of the Ancestors, which are people who look to be like the ruling class of the Citadel. It also talks about transportation, the economy, security, how players would travel to and from the Radiant Citadel, and also gives a good bit of detail about the Concord Jewels, which the Concord Jewels are floating gems that are floating around the Radiant Citadel itself that the players can actually get into and pilot to plane shift to all these different worlds that the Radiant Citadel is connected to. Because how the lore works is that the Radiant Citadel is a jewel floating around in the ethereal plane that connects to all these other versions of the material plane through all these different worlds, and all these different civilizations have come together and used the Radiant Citadel as essentially an extra-dimensional United Nations where they've all set up like an establishment with embassies, and they're all working together to make a better future for all of their separate worlds. But speaking about all these separate worlds, it might be a good idea to go ahead and start looking at them, because every chapter besides the first one gives a good detailed description of each of these little worlds that is connected to the Radiant Citadel, and what better way to actually get you into each of these worlds than an awesome, thrilling adventure. So, the other 13 chapters of the book are 13 adventures that are all standalones. You can do these as one-shots if you want to, or you can insert them easily into any campaign you're running, that have a variety of levels from 1 all the way up to 14. And judging based off the descriptions for each of these, it looks like there's going to be a massive amount of tonal difference between each of these adventures. So you can slip this into any adventuring party with any campaign to make them fit. Like the first one looks to be a really kind of funny little rivalry between two merchant clans, and it's going to be filled with a lot of fun mini games for the players to potentially participate in to resolve them. But the next one looks like it's a murder mystery that has a lot of interesting investigatory elements to it, while also trying to avoid a plague of some sorts, a magically induced plague that's causing the townspeople to be violent. So it looks like they're covering everything here as far as what type of adventures you can get. But another thing that I'm really a big fan of for each of these worlds is that there's a great variety of inspiration for each of them, as where the writing crew got their inspiration from. Because it looks as though they have plumbed the depths of every historical culture and mythology. Because, case in point, the first one appears to be, I would call it South Korean. The second one appears to have been based on some African folklore, and the third one looks to be Central, if not Mesoamerican. Actually, no, it's definitely like Central American, because it looks like Day of the Dead meets D&D. They're literally having like a Dia de los Muertos celebration in here. So they definitely did a really good job getting a whole bunch of different cultures for each of these worlds. Each of these adventures also even starts with a pronunciation guide, because they use actual languages and pronunciations from real world mythologies in order to inspire these worlds. And each adventure also includes maps, not only of the areas where the players can adventure, but also maps of the actual settlements and cities themselves, which is a really nice touch to add as well. Let's see here. It also includes at the end of every adventure, like every little chapter, a gazetteer, which we've seen a few of the gazetteers and stuff like Eberron, which includes a lot of nice lore and information about each of these separate worlds, talking about the history, the mythology, the geography, their economy, what sort of things exist outside of this one city, and also a nice little random table that if you want to do more adventures in each of these worlds, that it even gives you like 4 each that you can have little intrepid adventures in each of these worlds if you don't want to go back to the Citadel immediately. So, those are the 2 things that basically come in the book. The Radiant Citadel, which is going to be a nice little neutral adventuring hub to connect all of these worlds together, and then each of these worlds with their own adventures and their own separate histories and lores, tables to influence what will be in there, and also some really good gameable information. So these adventures are actually very invaluable because they have a lot of different uses. For one, they can be just standalone one-shots because each of these adventures is setting neutral. They don't take place in the Forgotten Realms or Eberron or Greyhawk or any of those. It's a city, and you can just insert that city into your campaign if you'd like to. You can just do a nice little quick one-shot if you just want to spice things up for your D&D group with these. Or if you want to do something a little similar to Ghosts of Saltmarsh, you can come up with some narrative connective tissue to connect all these adventures together, so your party of players is going through essentially a multi-dimensional romp into all these different worlds, and they're exploring all these different cultures and getting a lot of interesting backlash and culture conflicts and having a ball in the ethereal plane, it looks like. Another thing that I think is really cool that each of these adventures also have is they have ways for players to make characters that are indigenous to each of these worlds, explaining through like leading questions like what would your character do in this world, and of course things like, you know, leading adventure hooks, as in why would your characters actually be inserted into these hooks. Like case in point for the first one, if you wanted to make a character for that one, they ask questions along the lines of like, what would your family be known for? Do you have any connection to the night market? Because the first adventure is centralized around the night market, which is a giant, like, essentially market hub in the middle of like a coastal river area, and it would be implied that your characters in the adventures might all be merchant and market families, since it's essentially a bit of a merchant republic. And then of course that would lead naturally into the hooks for the adventure for you. So this book comes with a lot of good gameable information based off that, but it also gives a lot of advice and words to the wise about how you might want to do something in your own campaign, because each of these adventures is a great example of how you can build up your own campaign world from the city up. Not to mention each of these worlds, there are 13 of them. You can easily just stick your campaign in one of these incredibly vibrant and imaginative worlds if you want to, if you're looking for something a little bit different, and you just work from that city and you work out. Also, the Radiant Citadel itself is just a great archetype for how you want to do an otherworldly metropolitan city. If you want to look at like the information that they have written down in the book for it, or you can honestly just insert the Radiant Citadel into any other campaign that you want to, because the beauty of the Radiant Citadel is that it's stuck in the ethereal plane. And the ethereal plane can be connected to anywhere and be accessed by anyone in any realm, which is why there's like 30 plus material planes that this specific gem is connected to. And the awesome thing is, it even says in the book that all the Concord jewels that the players can take from the Citadel to these worlds have not all been found yet. So it also has a lot of easy hooks and lead-ins if you want to go ahead and make an adventure that's set in Forgotten Realms or Eberron, but you want to take your players into the ethereal plane. All you gotta do is provide them a Concord jewel in a dungeon or out in the wild somewhere, and it's off to the races. They're going into a Guardians of the Galaxy-esque romp throughout all these different multi-dimensions. And that's pretty much all that I saw from the book. There's a lot here that I really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to running a few of these in my Wednesday D&D one-shots, if not attempting to just try to make a full-scale campaign out of this, because D&D has been getting weird lately in the best possible way that we've seen with Spelljammer. And one of the things I've been really excited for is the possibility of exploring strange new worlds. And I'm gonna tell you right now, guys, this is a great step in the right direction for that front. So those are my opinions on the Radiant Citadel. That's what I saw that was inside of it that I think would be incredibly valuable in any DM or player's repertoire. And I'm just excited to have shared it with you. So thanks again for taking a sneak peek at the book with me. And until next time, drink more coffee and play more games.